Dottlings, and welcome back to Madame Tortuga's Lounge, hosting Shameless, self-premotion. And our special guest tonight is... introduce yourself.
I am Jason Ruehl from the Esoteric Book Club. Welcome back, goblins.
This is awesome. I am really glad to have you on. This is actually one of the few guests that I've promoted on my personal page because I really genuinely love your podcast.
I really appreciate that.
So kind of give the folks a little rundown, quick blurb about what your podcast is about.
Well, have you ever gone to a metaphysical shop or a bookstore and browsed the esoteric section and wondered, is this book any good? Is it factual? Does it have anything I could use? I basically read those books and give you a review ahead of time.
And it seems like more because I have been listening. I really enjoyed the was it the metaphysical breaking news? I think the last one I listened to was the one with the lemons in the trees and the Bigfoot sightings.
Right. So that's the esoteric news briefs, which there is a slight change in those coming up. I am shifting to the Patreon segments. And in place of those, I am replacing it with an editorial type show. Very similar to the one that's titled, What Does It Mean? But it's going to be a regular thing like that.
Oh, cool.
And the one you're talking about specifically is very interesting. It was lemon curses that were taking place in Canadian park services, or parks, state parks and national parks during COVID. And the Park Service actually had to issue a warning to people that if you see this, don't touch it. And if you're putting these up, please stop, because they were putting these out with pins in them, like straight pins. So It has the hazard of people, if they touch it, they could get stabbed by it. But also wildlife will go and try to eat the lemons. And people were hanging these from trees in the parks. So they had to issue that statement.
That's awful. I mean, that makes sense. They would eat a fruit.
And what's interesting is that article specifically broke me into the Canadian market as far as an audience.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, your stuff definitely, because a lot of people in West Virginia, I mean, I know that I do have a tendency to centralize my media around West Virginia because that's where I live, but I can definitely see where your media really crosses pretty much everything but the English-speaking language barrier.
Pretty much, yeah. And when I can find foreign stuff that's been translated, I definitely will eat it up if I can.
Great. So we have a comment from Shannon. Hello, Shannon.
Hello.
She says she loves your review of Amy Blackthorn's book.
I am really glad to hear that. I was super nervous about that at first because even though I was complimentary, I did have some criticisms for it. But that was one of the most popular episodes I've ever released. In fact, it got picked up by Wiser Publications and Amy herself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Both of them retweeted that and sent out links to it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought so.
Well, now I know I know who to get a hold of now when I get published.
Oh, absolutely.
So, how long have you been at this? What inspired you to take this journey with this podcast?
So I've been doing this for a little into 3 years now. I started right around the time that the COVID lockdown started because I was home. I didn't have anything to do, and I had a huge pile of books that I hadn't read yet. So I figured I'm going to read these. I might as well talk about them online because I don't have anyone else to talk to about this. And it just sort of blew up from there.
You know, I love that you brought up the fact that you don't really have a whole lot of people to talk to about this, because I think that's one of the things that has helped me build my channel is people looking for that voice. And I love your voice, by the way. You have a very smooth, radio perfect voice.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I do think that
you're right. You're right about the whole audience and how there are people who don't have an opportunity to talk about or even hear reviews of certain books like this. It actually reflects in my international market for that reason. I get a lot of reviews and interest from parts of Africa, India, places where witchcraft is still a thing that could get you executed.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's wild.
It's terrifying. It really is. And in India, it seems to be very similar to like the American witch trials, where it was an attempt to get undesirables in the community to be removed
more
so
of a
that someone else could
population
get
control.
property, things like that.
Yeah,
Africa, it is still very much a fear. People are afraid of witchcraft, and they actually very heartily believe that people are cursing them on a regular basis.
that's
No,
one
I
of those
shouldn't say
things. I'm like,
Africa. Sorry. Let me back up. It's not
okay,
Africa as a whole. It is
right,
certain countries in Africa. There are some African countries that are very much modern and more open to it, and they understand, at least if they believe in witchcraft, they understand that it's how it's used, and not necessarily that all witchcraft is evil. But there are some countries that are very strict on the practice. Even the accusation could get you executed.
right. So I know I've seen National Geographic videos and things like that. I have heard of some of that happening because some of the there is a fundamentalism issue everywhere now, and I have seen where people have taken that to an extreme in Africa and certain African places. I mean, I can't say that they haven't done that here. It's just the laws are more robust. Our law enforcement is more robust.
Now, I can't remember the country specifically, but it's one of the East African countries, I believe, where they have witch camps, basically. These are
Oh wow.
communities isolated from the rest of society, where women who are accused of witchcraft are basically sent to live for the rest of their lives. But there is a positive result from this, because oftentimes it is a place where abused women can go to seek shelter from an abusive or violent situation. And a lot of times they take their kids with them. And recently, the government stepped in and said, okay, we're not holding you here against your will. All of you are free to go home anytime you want. Does anybody need transportation? And of the entire community, very few people left.
Wow. I mean, that makes sense. Because, even if you go back home, even if you're able to go back home, then you're still not able to go back home. You still carry that mark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go back home, you still have that stigma because everybody in that community knows that you were part of that camp.
Right. Which makes sense. I mean, honestly, a lot of times the title of which is used as a means of population control, social control.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that, because I remember some of course I've watched some horrifying things on the internet like everybody else has, but I remember watching this priest was exorcising these kids, and what he did, they call it an exorcism, but he was actually cutting them open and pulling out subcutaneous tissue.
Oh.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But I mean, we pretend like it's over there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we had a book burning in Tennessee. That's not that far away.
Yeah, that guy, I won't say his name. I don't want to say his name. It's not that I won't. I don't want the attention, but I also don't want to give him attention either.
Right.
But I know someone who lives there, and she was doing lockdowns of her apartment. And I'm not talking like wards or anything. I'm talking like actual get your gun ready, have a pistol at your bedside, lock the windows, everything, because he lived in the same town as her. The church was right down the street from her. So it was as bad as it seemed on the news. It really was. It still is.
I mean, it's a book burning. Anytime we start burning books, people are next. Mm-hmm. It's kind of terrifying, and he's not gone away. Like none of it's gone away.
Right.
It hasn't even gotten quieter.
It's just not getting as much media coverage.
Right.
Actually, recently on one of the Appalachian witchcraft forums on Facebook, one of the main people on there, somehow this pastor got his personal name, phone number, and address, called the guy, and threatened him.
Oh, wow.
The guy thought it was funny because he doesn't believe that this guy can, this pastor can do anything to him. But it's still pretty scary.
But still, that's terrifying.
Yep.
Hello, Gwen. Hello, Natalie. Hello, Brenda. We got a nice
Hello.
little group showing up.
All right. I'm going to have to take your word for it because I can't see any of the chat. I've got like the individual group chat here for the screen, but not for any of the other sources.
Okay. It should be
Yeah,
on
so if
that
any
same
questions
tab,
pop up, please let me know. Oh, hold on a second. Wait, I do have it. There we go.
Yeah.
So
I
we've got
swear, I'm going to do like a little
Shannon,
how-to
Brenda,
video.
Natalie, Gwen, David. Sorry, what?
So that's okay. I was going to say, at some point, I'm going to do a little how-to instructional video for all of my guests, so I can like send them the links to their stuff, and then like send them this video so they can see exactly how the live stream goes and what to expect. So I know that a lot of the podcasts, do you record and edit and then post?
Correct, yes.
So you're not, it's a little different than doing a live stream.
Absolutely. The closest thing I've got is when I do interviews, but even then I record it and then edit that afterwards. That's why I don't say as much in the podcast.
Yeah. It would be nice. I've thought about doing that. I've thought about doing like a recording, like and editing it through Audacity so I can clean it up and then post it. But then I would miss like the live stream. So I love all the people who say hello. So we got like hellos from everybody. Hello, everybody. And there's Elizabeth. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello.
So this is a nice little group, but it's not very often we get everybody in here. But I think a lot of them are excited because of the. Tell us about what was your favorite book this year?
Oh, that is very easy. That was the Hoodoo Cleansing and Protection Magic. Now, that book, I don't know if you heard that episode. Did you?
I have not gotten that far into it. I listen to a lot of these when I'm on the road.
Ah, yes. You definitely have to go and listen to this one specifically because the author, it's not just the writing and it's not just the content. She laid the book out in a way that makes sense, and it is very easy to navigate. It doesn't just have stories that you get in a lot of these metaphysical books that talk about something without giving you details. Right. When she tells you about a cleansing house wash, she gives you the recipe for it. And not just the recipe, she tells you exactly what oils go into it and like what specific details she uses personally, as opposed to just saying, oh, you just need to throw some Florida water in your mop water. No, she goes into the detail of every little thing that goes into that whole process. So that was easily my favorite book from this year.
That's pretty cool.
Honestly, it's probably one of the highest rated books that I have read for the podcast in general. And I've read a lot of really good books.
There is one I wanted to bring up, but I think we should go ahead and go to commercial so I can look up the title.
Okay. Because
there was one, I think it's like the Nordic. It was the Nordic stuff.
Oh, that was Elves, Witches, and Gods by Catherine Heath.
Okay, hold on. Let's go ahead and do a commercial real quick, and then we'll come back and talk more about that.
Sounds good.
All right, Asen, roll the beautiful bean footage.
I'm Dottie the Psychic, and I'm sure you're wondering why I'm not wearing any makeup. Well, one reason is to irritate my social media manager, Asen Knight. Hi, Asen. The other reason is because I like to get to the naked truth about what it means to be a neurodivergent LGBT person with psychic abilities. I've got vlogs, blogs, and podcasts and videos all related to trying to live my best life and helping witches and bitches do the same thing. So, you can check all that out and get a reading from Dottie the Psychic at DOTTIE.com. Safe travel and much profit to you.
Do you have a cute pet? We know you do. Each week, Tracy Van chooses from submitted photos a featured reader for her Facebook page and provides a tarot reading. Your adorable pet cat, dog, rabbit, goat, chicken, snake, or more could be her next featured reader. Visit tracyvan.com, TracyVann.com, and click Featured Reader to submit. We look forward to seeing your pet next.
Hey everybody, Lady Gwendolyn here, and I am here to tell you how to get in contact with me and a little bit about what I do. I am the High Priestess that works with shadow work to help you grow and heal. And I work with access bars, Reiki, I do power forms. I'm recently getting into crystal healing, sound therapy as well. So you can go to Lady Gwendolyn Healing, that is LadyGwendolynHealing.com. Book your appointment with me. I do in person, I do over the phone, I do over Zoom. We can do that as well. My main goal is to help you grow and heal, because I've been there, I'm still going through it, and let my strength help guide you. See you soon.
Hey everybody, Natalie here from The Pendulum's Path. If you are in need of guidance, direction, spiritual connection, healing, or more, you have come to the right place. I have worked as a psychic and a medium for over 3 years, connecting people from all over the world with their loved ones, giving them insight and guidance into their current situations, their past healings, their blockages, and what they need to know in order for them to have a better future. It would be my absolute honor if you would come to my website at www.thependulumspath.com. Visit my shop. I have a whole bunch of crystals, oils, balms, mystery boxes, and more. And visit my services. I offer 15-minute, 30-minute, and 60-minute sessions. I also have email readings available if you're not comfortable with the one-on-one session with me, or if you just want to try me out. I encourage you to come visit me at the Pendulum's Path, and let's get you back on the right track today.
We're back. Yay! Okay, so I've had a chance to briefly look over your website. I'm sorry that I'm a busy woman. That's not an excuse, because I really do love the podcast. I've just hit or miss a lot of episodes. So I've gone back and I've really looked at the ones that I wanted to talk about. So I saw that you actually have one of our English hard. Natalie Vickers. You had Natalie Vickers as one of your guests.
Oh yeah, Natalie. Yeah, we're good friends.
She's been on the podcast.
Yeah, she's in the chat right now too.
Hello, Natalie.
Give her time; she'll start saying inappropriate things.
That was a fun podcast. I'll tell you what, having her on the show was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, it's always fun when you talk to her.
I want to talk about your merch. I see that you have merch.
I do. I have a little bit. It's mostly t-shirts at the moment. And it's something that Asen has actually been bugging me about getting more available. He wants one of the UFO shirts that I have yet to transfer into a t-shirt form. But yeah, I've got...
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. No, go ahead. I'm just rambling.
Go ahead and ramble. It's a podcast.
No,
it's a live stream / podcast. That's what we do on here, is ramble.
So I've had a lot of that art already on the TeePublic site for quite a while. So like the Mothman logo, the Flatwoods Monster, the Green Man, which is one of the most favorite ones on there. But the ones I added recently are the updated logo for my show, as well as the Esoteric News Briefs logo, which I personally like better than all of them. I got a shirt recently. It's purple with the logo on it. I can't recommend their stuff enough. They use really good quality merchandise to print their t-shirts. So they hold up well and they're just comfortable. See, Natalie's got one.
They go
Ooh,
up.
check on Printify. Okay.
They've got good. Let's get for plus sized gear. Do they have plus sized gear on this? Like how big do you think that they get?
I believe they go up to 2XL, possibly 3, but I'm not sure offhand. I think I ran into issues with them not having 3XL. Most places don't offer 3XL, but I'll double check. But if Printify has them available, I'll have to check that out. Oh, it goes up to 5. Okay, perfect.
I just clicked on so it's TeePublic. That's interesting. You know what? I'm going to have to look into that. You know, I'm always trying to branch out and have new stuff.
Now, the reason I like TeePublic specifically for this type of thing is because when you upload your artwork, you can choose what color t-shirts are available for that design. So if there's a t-shirt that washes out the logo, you can just eliminate that as an option.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, you know what? I'm definitely going to have to look more into that.
Now, there is some merchandise that I don't have on the website yet. I will have this available for the first time, I believe, in March at the Weird and Wonderful event in Morgantown. And I just got word of this today. Natalie already knows about this. So I did a Mothman design about 2 years ago. And I sent it to a company that makes ceramic pendants. They do like saints, Christian saints. They do animals, but they also had done a Bigfoot one in the past. So I contacted the guy and said, hey, would you want a Mothman pendant? And now my design is available as a necklace pendant. And I'm super excited for this.
That is actually really cool. I'm definitely excited to since we're on the subject of how to help get you paid, let's talk a little bit about your Patreon. What goes on there? What's the perks? Why should people pay you money?
Honestly, I think my Patreon is dirt cheap. You can donate as little as $1 a month. And if you do that, you get episodes as soon as I finish them, you get access to it. At the $3 level, you get, I just changed it all recently, so I have to actually sit back and think about what you get.
Right.
I'm not sure offhand, but at the $5 level, you're going to get the Esoteric News Briefs, which is now a Patreon exclusive episode. Oh, at the $3 level, you get extended episodes. And some of these episodes are double in length. So that's extra content right there by itself, in addition to the extra episode. And then from there on up, it's just like, I mention you by name on show every time. So it really helps out a lot. I'm at the point now where I'm just now breaking even for like server costs and hosting, and I'm able to buy one book a month.
That's cool. So, hey, you know what? If you're reaching a point of breaking even, then profit's next, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I'd like to get to a point where I can get some sort of profit from doing this. It's not essential because I do enjoy what I do, but I put a lot of effort into this. One episode takes maybe 8 hours to write, record, and produce. The news brief episodes tend to take a little bit longer, which is why I'm no longer doing those on a regular basis. Plus, those were contingent. Sorry, go ahead.
Which ones were you not doing regularly anymore?
The news briefs, the news ones. Those are even more difficult because it's contingent on what shows up in the news. There's some times where there's just no interesting news. And if I read what I had, the episode would be 10 minutes long at best. And most of that would be at the introduction.
You know what? That's fair. I get that.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes. That's actually what inspired the Not Deer episode that I did several months back. There was no news. So I had heard about this cryptid, and I just started to research it because I'd never heard of it. and it's semi-local. It's from the Virginia, West Virginia border area. I'd never heard of it. There was very little on it, so I found out that it's fairly recently named, but it may not necessarily be a new cryptid. We were actually talking about this before the show. So
Yes, I actually
to
have
catch
seen
everybody
one.
else up, the not deer is spelled like N-O-T, as in that's not a deer, is an entity that disguises itself to seem like a white-tailed deer, and it will oftentimes hide in a herd of other deer as camouflage. But if you're watching it, its behaviors will seem slightly off. It will seem a little too intelligent. And then you start to notice different details about it, how like the eyes aren't really on the sides of its head like a prey animal would be. They face the front like a predator. And I don't know if you've ever seen inside of a deer's mouth, but they don't have front teeth. But the not deer does. It would have fangs. And then you notice that maybe the antlers are a little strange looking. And then the legs bend the wrong direction. And in some extreme cases, people say these things stand up and their front paws are actually human hands. It's really creepy. I'm getting goosebumps.
That sounds a lot like what I've heard called, and I don't think that skinwalkers. They sound a lot like what I've heard called skinwalkers.
Possibly. I think it's more of a singular entity because from what my understanding is that a skinwalker is a person who can take the form of an animal that they have previously killed and skinned, obviously, because they're physically wearing the skin and that changes them into that animal. It's also a really creepy subject because in order to do that, you have to break a cultural taboo within the tribe, which generally involves murdering a family member.
Oh. Yeah, I think I've seen that because I remember they brought that up in like True Blood, and I looked it up and it was like, oh, okay, that's a little creepy.
Yeah.
We were talking about the not deer, but I think I've actually seen one of those. That's what we were talking about before the show. Was one time I was driving down Route 2, and there's nothing creepier than a lonely stretch of highway between nowhere and nowhere, but then you put it next to a river and it's even worse.
Yeah.
It's like the road itself starts to pick up its own charge, the whole thing. And one night we were, my ex and I were driving home, and that's when the light was wrapping around it. Like the light itself wasn't necessarily curving, but it was almost bending at points. Like there were mirrors or something reflecting it, but there's nothing there to reflect it. But it looked like it was wrapping around the highway. And we're getting close to the town where we live, and something darted across the highway at way too fast a speed, and it almost looked like like that stage of CGI where you see the balls and the sticks and it looked like a deer shape moving across. Brandon saw more of the full deer shape, but I just saw like this like the CGI skeleton run across the highway. And then I'll be dipped if we didn't see a video. Somebody else had recorded something exactly like that happening. I don't know where they recorded it from, but we saw it on the internet like 4 or 5 weeks later.
Yeah. They're creepy for sure. Now, actually, in that article that I did, I got into the possible explanations for what it could be, in addition to just an actual cryptid. So one of the possible things is that there is something called chronic wasting disease, which very frequently the deer around here get, and it causes tumorous growths, which was one of the reports in some of the accounts, but not all of them. The other one is albinism in white-tailed deer, which is super, super creepy if you've never seen it.
Like, I've seen an albino deer. That was not what was going on. This was not... There was no flesh on this thing. Like, it wasn't a wasted deer. The thing I saw was definitely not alive.
Yeah.
Number one, it moved way too fast to be a deer. Like, wasting disease is not going to make that deer move faster.
No, in fact, it does the opposite.
Yeah, they don't usually last long.
No.
That wouldn't surprise me. That yeah, I've been fortunate enough not to have run into that wasting deer disease because they look terrible from what I understand. I've seen pictures.
Yeah, it's really bad. I believe
Yeah.
the DNR actually issued a statement about those over the past few years. It was a problem on the border of Pennsylvania and West Virginia.
I knew that it had come from the north.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It looked mangy. Okay, what are you saying, Skinwalker? As long as it stays in
Ethan-
front of my car, I'll leave it alone. So now, okay, David says, so now he's never going to sleep again.
Well, Dave, you don't sleep anyway.
Oh, Shannon says if you're within comfortable driving distance, that she can borrow her books.
Well, I'll check into it after the show, see where you actually live. But yeah, Asen wants me to go into my leather work, so I might as well show this off while I can.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. That looks like your one of your photos.
It is. It's the exact same mask.
Cool.
So this is a Green Man mask based on a sycamore leaf carved into leather, hand-tooled, hand-dyed. I actually just made this for a masquerade party that we had at the school I teach at. And apparently, from what I was told by the children, it is super creepy by firelight.
You know, if you don't know what you're getting into, it can be, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, one of my
You know, that
coworkers
is-
brought in a full, like, over-the-head goat mask, so that was really creepy.
That's kind of brilliant, though. You know, I do realize that people who get into, like, the esoteric things, we creep out at different things than other people do. Sometimes I really do feel like Morticia Adams. I'm like, the things that set my teeth on edge, other people find very normal. And the things that set other people's teeth on edge and they're weirded out by, I'm like, oh, it's a Sunday. A lovely day.
Yeah. Natalie loves that mask. She loves the Green Man in general. So that's why she has one of the t-shirts I designed.
I definitely want to talk more about because you do have a pretty good knowledge base about cryptids. So let's go ahead and make sure, because I'm sorry, y'all, I have a headache, so I may not get to do this one as long as I normally do. But let's go ahead and run the second set of commercials, and then we can talk about the cryptids.
Absolutely. Ask away.
Okay.
Welcome back, goblins! My name is Jason, and I am the host of the Esoteric Book Club, a podcast that examines titles on the magical, paranormal, the mysterious, and the strange. I release 2 episodes a month, in which I review books on esoteric topics, recap news of the weird, and conduct interviews with authors, practitioners, and experiencers. The Esoteric Book Club can be found on every major podcast service or can be streamed directly from esotericbookclub.org.
Hi, I'm Tracy Van. I provide a blended reading consisting of mediumship, psychic, and tarot cards. A reading from me can cover any guidance you need from relationships with your partner or your family, spiritual, financial, any questions you may need clarity on. If you would like to book an appointment with me, check out my website, tracyvann.com. That's TRACYVANN.com. I have bookings from 15 to 60 minutes you may choose from. That helps if you just have a quick question, need an answer, or if you're looking for a reading in more depth, I'm here to provide the guidance and clarity for you. Let's just figure it out. Bye.
Hi, Techie Joe here. I work with Asen Knight, some of the best psychics in West Virginia, to create amazing live streams and podcasts for the Psychic Coffee Shop Network. Together, we brew up great content discussing news, events, hot topics, and more, all from a psychic perspective. On the Psychic Coffee Shop, we interview amazing authors in the metaphysical realm. Coffee and Tea combines Asen with Tracy, Dottie, Natalie, or Lady Gwendolyn for the good and the bad of being a psychic. Shameless Self-Promotion with Dottie the Psychic talks to leading and emerging YouTubers and business owners in our community. Mountain Bears brings you the latest in LGBT news and politics. The Psychic That Plans answers the question of, well, how a psychic plans. Plus, we're live on air. We take your comments and your questions, including psychic advice questions. Check out our amazing programming, book an appointment with top psychics, and find out all the wonderful things we have to offer at pcsbnetwork.com today.
Hi, I'm Ace Knight. I provide tarot readings covering everything from love and relationships to your life questions and your most spiritual answers. And also, I provide a lot of guidance in finances and divorces and all those relationship problems. So, if you'd like to get a reading from me privately, not on air, you can feel free to do so by visiting aceandnight.com and booking your appointment. I also provide on-demand services, so if your life is a little chaotic, you can go ahead and click that call now button there on my site. Great for a quick answer question. All right, guys, back to the show. Enjoy.
Okay, so we were talking on the private chat a little bit during the break, and before we get to the cryptids, let's talk a little bit more about your leatherworking. I saw the mask. Are you thinking about providing, like, are you thinking about selling arts materials, anything like that? Are you going to develop that business wise?
I actually started out doing leather work. I did that for about 10 years. Dave in the chat actually knows, and I have a hilarious story about that I'll tell here in a second. But it got to a point where it's a very limited, very niche market of the people that want leather work items. And the cost of leather has since gone up considerably. It's about doubled what I used to get it for. So combine that with the time it takes to actually craft these things, it's really just not cost effective. Like that mask that I just showed you, I would have to sell that for about $100 to recap what I put into it, which is why I tend to just do those things for myself.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just the economic reality of it. I started running into an issue towards the end of my leatherworking career where laser cutters became a big thing. So people who did leather work were using their laser cutter to pre-cut the patterns, pre-punch the holes with the laser. They could do custom etching, custom lettering. They could put all kinds of designs on their leather work, but it didn't actually take any effort. They just throw it in the machine and walk away for 3 hours and come back and it's done. All they had to do was stitch it together. It's not quite the same with hand-tooled, hand-decorated items like that. So the cost of a pre-generated item like that versus what I would sell it for, I just wasn't getting the business for it. But don't get me wrong, if I had space for a laser cutter, I absolutely would have one, and I would be using it for my leather work. Just, I don't have space for one to use it.
Okay. Well,
But the story about my leather work. So there's a local comic convention called PopCon West Virginia. And Dave had bought stuff from me in the past. He bought like a dice bag, a couple game boards that I had made. And he showed up the following year and he was introducing one of his friends to me. And he was like, hey, this is Jason. He's my... And he just paused. He was like, what am I going to call you? And I very calmly just said, Leather Daddy. And the shock on his face, he was speechless. It was great. And he and I both tell that story now because it's so funny in hindsight. But man, it was silent. You could hear a pin drop.
Though, it's moments like that make life rich.
Absolutely, yeah. Dave just said that he has a Nevatovel board, which is the Viking chess game, and a Roman board game, which was probably, let's say that was Latrunculi. It's sort of like a chess checkers combination that was played by the ancient Romans.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I definitely would like to talk more history stuff with you because I do love history on this channel. We actually, if y'all, this is on my second channel, the Madame Tortuga's Lounge, but on my primary YouTube channel, I actually have brought up a lot of this historical stuff around the different divination types that I've covered.
Mm.
So
Have you talked about knuckle bones yet?
no, the dice.
Ooh. No, like actual knuckle bones.
No.
So knuckle bones were from mustelid animals, so like things with cloven hooves. I use deer because that's available here, but originally it was
Right.
sheep. And they have a very unique, almost like a kidney-shaped knuckle. And one side is concave, one is convex, and then it's got that beam shape, right? And you would throw
Right.
that. And there's a numerological attribution to each side, and you total up the number based on the 4 knuckle bones that you throw, and then it comes up with a pre-generated fortune based on that.
I've
And
done
then that
something
eventually
like. Right.
No, go ahead. It eventually turned into actual physical, like 6-sided dice.
Yeah, that's where I started. That's why they call it throwing the bones.
Exactly.
I actually did something like that. It's an old video now compared to all the rest of them. This was back when I was still editing with like photo editor. I think this was the last video I did using like the editing software that comes with the computer.
Oh.
Turkey neck, the vertebrae
Oh.
of a turkey to the dog ate half of them, but I had enough for the video where I talk about how throwing bones. I didn't realize it was the knuckle bones. I knew it was bones, obviously. I knew that it come from bones, and those were the ones that were the most like I looked at them and surmised that it was a potential dice.
Yeah, so the knuckle bones came from the Mediterranean, but the turkey neck bones, I've never heard of that.
That was something that I just thought of in the moment. I'm like, because I knew it was bones. I was doing a broader look at osteomancy.
Yes.
So I really didn't deep dive into the dice. I watched a book review from another YouTuber that I think I put in the resources of that video. I wanted to go back. I put it in there because I wanted to go back and buy the book so I could redo the whole video later when I got some practice with the whole thing. Because production's hard.
Yeah. I actually have a few pretty good books. I don't remember the titles offhand, but after the show, I'll send the links to you. There's osteomancy, and one of the books is literally called Throwing the Bones. And it's about divination using bones and different found materials.
Yeah, I definitely know who to get a hold of for a good book reference now.
Oh, absolutely. And anybody in the chat, if you have a question about a book or you need recommendations on authors or anything, feel free to contact me.
Have you thought about doing like well, it's late now, but like maybe at the end of the year you do it like a top 10?
I thought about it, but I only do 13 episodes a year, so a top 10 would be a little
much. Maybe top 3.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would basically just be eliminating the 3 that I didn't like. But
right.
I think I'll have to choose a milestone. I could definitely do that in the future and come back and do a retrospective. Because there's been a lot of books that I was very impressed with, some that were kind of in the middle, and some that were terrible. So,
that's always good. That's one of the things. What is the most terrible book? What is one book that you don't think that you would ever suggest to somebody?
Oh, that was the it was a recent one. It was it's something like how to write your witchcraft grimoire or something. Writing for witchcraft. I don't remember offhand. It was bad. The author was a poet, and it had the potential to be really good if she would explain to you how to go about the writing process, what the different poetic meters are, and all the different things that could go into the English language construction aspect of writing.
Right.
But no, it was mostly just random occasional prompts and her talking about writing. It was very like 3 steps removed from
Meta.
what the book claimed to have been.
It's,
But in all
it sounds
fairness,
like
I got it
you
off
went
the
meta.
bargain shelf at Books A Million, so I didn't pay much for it.
Fair enough.
But that said, there's always something that you can take away from any book, no matter how bad it is. This book, I actually looked into the designer and who did the design for this book because it's absolutely gorgeous. And that's one of the things that caught my attention with it. The cover was beautiful. The interior was beautiful. The format of the physical book was amazing. The illustrations fit the theme perfectly, but the content was not good.
Yeah.
It's one of those times where if I wrote a book, I want to find that designer and have them work on it for me. And yes, Dave, that was a History of Ghosts. That was Dan Aykroyd's father talking about their grandfather.
Oh, wow.
Which coincidentally, that is a fantastic book. I don't know how many people out there know this, but that is why Ghostbusters came into existence. It's because Dan Aykroyd's family was a very big contributor to the spiritualism movement at the turn of the century.
Oh, wow.
Asen is asking, do you think the independent publishing market has changed the books hitting the market? Yes. Actually, it's changed it for the better recently. It started out that pretty much if it was independently published, you can guarantee that it's not been edited. The content wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be formatted properly. But in recent times, independent publishing and independently produced books have actually had some of the better insights and looks and instruction into certain practices compared to the mainstream mass market books. Because those book companies, by and large, want to get as many books out there on the market as possible. Someone who's independently publishing, their name and their personal reputation is on the line. So they are doing the best they possibly can in the new market. That said, there's also some very bad ones out there because we have run into the issue of AI written books. And this is not a new thing. This is something that's been going on for several years. People are feeding the titles of books that are available online. They may have like a PDF copy, a digital copy of a series of books that they enjoy. They feed it into this AI algorithm and it spits out a book. So these people just make a very fancy cover. They put it up online on Amazon for like a $5 download as a PDF. And half the time the content, even the physical language in there doesn't make sense. It just progressively gets more and more nonsensical as you continue into the book.
See, you know what? That kind of worries me. I'm not going to lie. When AI starts writing books, we're that much closer to sentient robots. That's why you got to be nice to Siri.
And there is recently, I forget the author. It was maybe it was Lisa Chamberlain. It was Lisa something, and there was a big long list of books and authors that were listed on these books who were supposedly the authors. Right? They were pen names. They weren't real people. And this lady's name was on there, and it got to a point where she had to start contacting people, like by email and by Facebook and Messenger and stuff, and say, "Look, no, I'm a real person. So please take me off this list."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild. So okay, so I definitely want to get back to the cryptids. But first I want to ask, what would your advice be to somebody who was interested in publishing? Because I am interested. I've almost got my deck done, y'all. Been working on it.
Advice for publishers? I think that might be a little outside my wheelhouse. I would say don't get discouraged if a publishing company turns down your manuscript. Just keep trying at it. Go to the big ones that you want to be published by. That's the key right there. Don't find a publisher who just wants to put your book out. Because eventually, if you apply enough times, yes, someone will find you. That doesn't mean they're going to do anything to help you. They may not do any marketing. They may not do any promotion. So at that point, rather than pay them royalties for just physically publishing your book, you might as well self-publish it yourself. And anymore, you can self-publish and sell on Amazon and never have to physically touch an actual copy of your book until it sells.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. So we had a couple questions. Where was that? The question is, do you think the stranglehold of Llewellyn has broken? Maybe. Llewellyn still corners a very big section of the market. And if you go to a bookstore now, you will find primarily their books out there. They are really hit or miss on the content. Some of the places or some of the authors that I've gone through and interviewed were published by Llewellyn, and their work is fantastic. You also have to look at some of the smaller publishing companies because they are producing, I would say, a higher quality content than the material that is often being pushed by Llewellyn. Wiser Books is one that typically has better quality control. It's not guaranteed because they have had some that were complete misses, like they just didn't work out. There's also John Hunt Publishing, whose imprint is Moon Books. They do all the Pagan Portal series and now the Pantheon series. And I know one of the major authors for that is Morgan Daimler. And they are probably one of the best scholarly researchers on esotericism, magic, folklore, and just anything in this field. Morgan is probably the best researcher you'll find.
Red Wheel?
Yeah, Red Wheel. Red Wheel is an imprint of Wiser, I believe. And there's also another one. It's Bear Inner Traditions, like bear, the animal, the bear. And it's hit or miss. There's a lot of
There's always going to be junk.
neo-shamanism on there, I would say. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's always going to be junk.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what the publisher is. Like, because, sometimes books just fall flat because the audience is not ready for them, or, somebody's cousin got something published.
Yeah. I would actually say your best bet right now is to self-publish and use that as a platform to take to a publisher as a means of saying, hey, here's my content. It has sold X amount of books in this amount of time. Do you want to publish this? Because the hurdles for physically producing a book aren't necessarily there anymore for independent authors.
Right.
Now, that said, you're going to have to do a lot of legwork on your own just to get the book out there. But it seems like if you have platforms like Shameless self-promotion, it makes all of that a lot easier.
Well, I definitely want to promote as much as possible. Like, eventually I want to make this big enough that people want to come on here to do their launch parties.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell that you really genuinely enjoy what you're doing.
I do. I'm very passionate about it. Especially in this field, there is so much misinformation and so much bad information. Stuff that can be actually very harmful, especially when you're talking about things like herbs or possibly crystals or gemstones that are potentially toxic just to be around. Like, nobody wants to go to a shop and pick up a citrine only to find out it's radioactive. Like, that's not helping anybody.
No. And it does happen. I know that specifically I know a lot of people were soaking their stones in water and then drinking the water. Anything with ice in it, don't do that.
No.
It's water soluble and it could kill you. Like, it's like drinking glass.
Yeah.
And like that. And of course, people have been poisoning themselves with herbs since the dawn of time.
What was that one from Goop magazine? Who's the one that produces that? Gwyneth Paltrow? I remember she was peddling women's marital aids made out of crystals. But one of the stones that she was using was water soluble and highly toxic.
Oh my God.
She got in a lot of trouble for that. Granted, she just pulled it all from the market and made a big apology, but Definitely, there was no research put into that ahead of time.
Right.
And it was something
Yeah, and
like,
that's one other thing.
yeah,
That's one thing I would like to bring up, this because that's one of those things, like, this is part of why, like, if you come to my shop, I probably will never sell sage or Palo Santo, because you've also not only you have to worry about whether something is toxic or not, but whether it's ethically sourced.
hmm
Like, a lot of the white sage, they were having trouble with people going on to Native American reservations and wiping out their crop.
hmm Yeah, sourcing is probably the biggest thing that you can do as far as like white sage. And honestly, half the stuff we get is not white sage anyway. It's a
Yeah.
different species. It's just marketed as white sage. But really, I don't want I have a very strong pushback against the idea that burning sage is cultural appropriation, because it actually harms Native Americans and Native American communities, because for a lot of them, that's how they make money. That's how they make a living, is they grow, harvest, gather, and sell sage because it's in demand. Same thing with Palo Santo. Yes, the tree has to fall and sit for a certain amount of time, but the communities there that are harvesting this are using the proceeds to replant other trees. It's sustainable. This is how they're keeping those forests sustainable in the first place.
You know what? That's a valid point. I would definitely. That's one of those things. Like, someday in the vague and distant future, I really want to research so that I could promote companies that are ethically sourcing that stuff.
hmm
Because I don't have a problem
Yeah.
using. I don't use a lot of smoke material because, number one, if I'm doing it for a client, some clients are allergic to smoke and whatnot, and I can use a bell and achieve a lot of the same effect. But if
Mhm.
you use sage, you can also grow your own too. That's another thing.
Oh, absolutely.
So I
And
used
we
to
should
grow
be in the right
sage.
climate zone for that.
Yeah, common sage. My grandmother had sage growing. It was funny because it only got picked around Thanksgiving because she was a good Christian woman. She used it as a seasoning.
hmm Yeah.
It's funny.
I
I've run
think it was
across
my
people.
friend Mara. Natalie knows her. Mara, we have a group chat going. I believe she's the one that I know who grew sweetgrass. And it grows super well in this climate. As long as you can find seeds for it, it's a beautiful smoke cleansing herb. And it smells great, but it's super expensive if you go to get it in a store somewhere.
You know what? That might be his topic. That would be a great topic for a full-length video looking into ethical sourcing. I've already got, like, that would definitely be separate from the safety hazard one that I've been. That's
Mhm.
one of those videos that has been on the back burner since the inception of this channel. Is a good old-fashioned safety video. I'm gonna break it down by the elements,
Yeah.
but
And
well, not
it's a
this channel.
necessary thing too. It's
Right.
necessary. There's not a lot of talk about that out there. There is a big, it was clickbait basically. It's people either for or against using sage, for or against Palo Santo, and why it's virtue signaling more than anything else. And people weren't using common sense during this whole ban, saying that you shouldn't burn sage because it's not part of your culture. We don't have
You know
access
what?
to
I
the
agree.
sage that they're using, they have a very specific northern white sage, and I've smelled it. It smells very different from what we burn. It's so much more potent and pungent.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can understand why people have a problem. This is definitely one of those nuanced things because there's parts of my
Mhm.
personal practice that I know obviously happened when Europe was, Europeans were and Native Americans were exposed to each other. Because I made dream catchers. I love making dream catchers, and I did stop for a long time because I did not want to, cause harm.
Mhm.
But honestly, who am I causing harm to? And I do think that if you're going to do something like that, you should try and buy like handmade and things like that. Try to be sustainable, things like that. And the only reason, but I do agree with the cultural appropriation. There's some parts of our culture that, yes, they may have come from other people, but they're now an intricate part of our own personal practice.
Yeah, and the part that becomes cultural appropriation is if you burn sage and say that you're doing it as a Native American cleansing ceremony. No, you're burning sage to do a Wiccan. Most people, how they use it, is to burn sage as a Wiccan cleansing ceremony because that's the practice they're using. If you start to say that you're doing Native American ceremonies, you start selling sweat lodges and you start selling things like that, and you're not a tribal member, that's a problem. That is super
Yeah,
problematic. That is cultural appropriation.
it
And
definitely
the
happens, but I
Dreamcatcher
agree.
one
Like, it's
specifically. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
that, I mean, we've definitely seen that in the culture. That's all I was gonna say.
hmm
Go ahead.
Dreamcatcher specifically is an example that I used in some of my classes recently with children. Is that the dream catchers that we're making are not the same as dream catchers as a cultural magical talisman. They're similar and they're based on similar principles, but it's not the same thing. And really, it's gotten so far away from its origins that for the most part, natives don't care as long as you're not claiming that this is a Native American artifact.
Right.
Again, it's another thing that if we stop buying them, that really hurts them, the ones that are traveling with powwow circuits who are vending at these events. And if there's suddenly a ban on white sage and dream catchers, well, that's half their market right there, and it really hurts them in the long run.
You know what? That's kind of refreshing, and I'm glad to hear that because I didn't really think of it that way.
hmm
And also, I did notice this because 2020 rattled everybody's bones. And
Yes.
that's when a lot of this started really coming up and hearing about the cultural appropriation and things like that. But there was a lot of looking at minorities almost as a single being.
hmm
Like,
Yeah.
all of this minority, all of that minority. You know, that'd be like all of West Virginians. That's not how West Virginia works.
Right. Right. And I see the good and the bad in that whole thing too, because it was
Right.
a signal that there was raised awareness of problematic behavior, but it was done in a way that was immature,
Reactionary.
maybe. It's people who just discovered the mindful practice and mindfulness in their spiritual life, and
Right.
they extrapolated a little too far without thinking over the repercussions of the wider impact.
I do think because I
Like
did
Shannon
that.
says here, Shannon in the chat, she says her grandmother taught her to make dream catchers and use sage, and that was passed on through her family as part of Native American descent, which is great, especially if you're learning this directly from family members. That's perfect. That is exactly how it was always meant to be handed down.
Right. That's
And
awesome.
Asen points out too, it's a way of control, and it hurts. It's literally gatekeeping, is what it is, but it's racially motivated gatekeeping, which after you go so far, it becomes racist in itself. And that's not something that people really think about. When you get to a point where you start saying you have to be a specific race to do certain things, that's not where you're supposed to be going with that. You're supposed to be saying, okay, is this a closed practice from the community? Do they
Right.
ask us, don't do this, don't imitate this, don't attempt this without training? Or are you just saying, you can't do this because you're not black? That is a problem.
That is a problem.
And like you were saying,
Anytime the race is
minorities
part
are
of the question.
not monolithic.
Right. That's exactly
Let's
true.
see
And I
what-
do notice that a lot of the people I hear who, honestly, a lot of the direct complaints that I've gotten because we hosted the Barefoot Gypsy on here. And because she has Gypsy in the name of her shop, we caught some minor blowback. But it was from people who were of obvious Caucasian descent, not people from the Romney social structure, culture, or anything like that. And also, I was like, that's one of those things. Like, yes, it did start out as a slur.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what Natalie says here. She says, when one culture adopts another culture's practices, it's a form of compliment and flattery. It works for them, so it will work for us. The human experience is a shared one, so why keep things to ourselves so others might suffer? I understand the cultural appropriation side of things, however. So much of our lived lives are due to other cultures' practices. You know, yeah, if a culture is willing to share with you, that's perfectly all right. If they're not asking us to stop doing something, and it's not done with malice, and it's not done specifically to be offensive, do the
that's
best
how
you can.
culture
That's basically all we
propagates.
can say. Yeah.
I mean, culture has to propagate. You
Mhm.
know, see, like the gypsy thing. When I was growing up, I didn't even think of it being a culture. I thought of it being as more almost like hippies.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I thought more of the gypsies being people who traveled around as like, you know, there was a cultural element to it, but you know, we're talking about post 70s. Anybody who was a flower child thought of themselves as a gypsy.
Right. Right. And Asen brought up the runes earlier, and that's another one that is specifically becoming radicalized on racial lines, which I
Yeah.
am advocating against 100%. I hate this, absolutely hate this.
There
There
are
are
actually quite
so
a
many groups
few.
out there. Yeah, so many groups are saying that if you're not white, you can't use runes.
That's so
That
stupid.
is
Because, you know,
100% wrong. 100%.
that's ugly. That is ugly, is what it is. Because I know well, I'm not going to hang around racists, but like
Right.
I know several people who are in the also true community that are very vocal about not getting their symbols stolen by a bunch of racist assholes. Again, I mean,
Mhm.
that's how they end up with the swastika. Let's not let this happen again.
Right. And it is happening to some degree with certain runes because they have co-opted it to a point where it's on their racist flags and emblems, which is unfortunate, but it is a very specific symbol, so it's fairly easy to recognize. But
Yeah.
it's so bad. It really is. It's at a point now where I don't wear my Thor's hammer or anything like that in public. I can't.
And
I
that's
don't
sad
trust
because
other people.
there's a whole face of, and I've thought about that before because I have a bound rune on my back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is a tattoo because I'm part of a group of people who would, you know, who will answer my call at 3 a.m. That's what that
Right.
means. And that's all that it means. These people are some of the most open-minded individuals you'll ever meet. But we all got a
Mm-hmm.
tattoo because we lost somebody together.
Oh,
You know?
okay.
So I take it very personally offensive when people use runes in a racist manner.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right.
At a point now where, sorry, the organization Our Troth, which is a heathen organization, it's I believe it's on the east coast of the U.S. was where it's based. It rewrote its entire book series and added a third book recently, not just to eliminate possibly racist undertones, which I don't believe their second edition was subtly racist. The author was pretty good about being open and accepting, but they rewrote the books specifically to be inclusive. They wanted it put in writing. Yes, heathens can be gay. Heathens can be from other countries. Heathens aren't just northern Germanic peoples.
Right.
It can
They
be
don't care what color
anybody.
I love the sayings. I love their sayings. Like, we don't care what color your skin as long as your blood's red.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of
And
a
even
pretty
then, I
stupid
wouldn't be
thing.
upset if it was blue. I mean, you want blue blood? Fine. You have blue blood and you want to follow Thor? Great. I'm all for it.
I was thinking more like green. We might find a copper-based life form out there. It does carry oxygen.
Well, we have one on Earth. It's octopi.
Octopi.
That's why they can't survive on land too often, because they have a copper-based blood system, and they can't carry oxygen using hemoglobin as well.
Wow. Well, live and learn.
Yeah, I just learned that this past year too.
Okay, so we're gonna get back to cryptids because we are up over an hour. We're at an hour and 10 minutes. This is supposed to end about 10 minutes ago. So, who is your favorite cryptid?
Oh, that one's pretty easy. That's got to be Bigfoot. And this is a discussion that I was having earlier today with someone else, and how cryptids have become an identifying symbol for a lot of marginalized groups and people. And that's kind of a spoiler for one of my upcoming episodes too, which I'll get into here later. But like Bigfoot, think about what Bigfoot symbolizes. He's this hairy, crazy looking woodsman who just doesn't want to be around people. He just wants to go out and do his own thing. He doesn't want interference. He wants people to leave him alone. And that's generally how I am. Like, this is kind of stressful for me. Being on camera is a lot easier than being in person. But like when I vend at events, after a few hours, I am exhausted. I'm done. I don't want to be around people, and I pretty much have to detox for 24 hours. So I'm at home in the woods. I want to go out and have trees over top of me and have bushes around me. I want to feel like dirt on my skin and under my fingernails. I don't want to be in this concrete jungle.
That's why my fingers are never done. Like, I used to try and do my fingers, but if I get too much peopling, I gotta go dirt somewhere.
Yep, exactly. Let's see. Natalie says rusty cephalopods. Actually, it's the complete opposite. There's no iron. There's a very, very minimal amount of iron in their blood, so they would never rust. That's also one of the theories as to a lot of people are suggesting that cephalopods came from space, that they are a non-terrestrial organism, because unlike every other creature on the planet that has blood, cephalopods' blood is different. Let's see. David is asking, is there any chance we could get Mothman officially recognized as West Virginia state bird?
No, but we could try.
Yeah, we could try.
Why not? I think I did just listen to one of your the same news report with the lemons also had was talking about the Bigfoot sightings.
Mm-hmm. That one was like several years ago, so you would have to remind me what that said, because I don't remember at this point.
People have come to.
But yeah, if we wanted to talk about cryptids and identity, I know locally the local Pride events had cryptid themes, and I kind of feel bad because when they made the announcement, I didn't understand that the association. I didn't understand that cryptids were being used in this manner to self-identify, and I used a laugh emoji on the post. So I kind of feel bad about that in hindsight, but it actually makes a lot of sense. And I was talking to someone today, and this is a teaser specifically for upcoming episodes. There was a UFO researcher from West Virginia named Gray Barker. He was a contemporary of John Keel's, only this guy liked to play pranks on John. Gray Barker was the one who did a lot of the Flatwoods Monster, and he's known specifically for breaking the Vegetable Man story. I just found out today that Gray Barker was a closeted homosexual, and that a lot of his writing, how it devolved to a certain point where it's no longer just like reporting on the events, was this narrative. And it's coming out that his symbolism in his books may have been symbols for his own personal experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I've been very fortunate. I haven't read any of his books yet. So knowing that going into it, I'm going to be able to read those books with that in the back of my mind. So I'll be able to see that symbolism without having to reread the text.
You know what? That's actually pretty awesome. Sometimes it's nice to go in with a paratext already established.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So we definitely want to hear more about that.
Yeah, that's going to be a 2-part episode. I'm going to read over his first book that he released called "They Knew Too Much About UFOs." which kind of insinuates a Man in Black encounter type story behind it. But then I'm also going to do an esoteric footnotes episode on, as much as I can find, Gray Barker's history and everything involving his personal life and his studies and his research. We're actually very fortunate because his archives are in Clarksburg, which is only like 45 minutes away. They have it archived in the library there.
I know there's a metaphysical shop up there whose name has completely escaped me, that I was interested in doing for psychic shopping.
Where, in Morgantown or in Clarksburg?
Clarksburg. Well, I did the one in Morgantown. That's Earth Magic. I actually have them still sitting in my editor. I'm going to try and start getting more editing done, folks. Just don't hold your breath. That's not worth it. I'm going to try and get 6 hours of it. That's like my New Year's resolution goal type thing, is to try and get at least 6 hours of video editing done a week. It's probably going to drop down to 3 a week if I can get caught, and once I get caught up, because I've got like Central Pagan Pride from last year. I've got Earth Magic. I have one that it's very tangential to paganism. It's actually like paddle boating witches. I'm like, oh, I came here to represent the pagan community. Like, we all just wanted to dress up like witches and paddleboard. Like, okay, well, start if I just take some pictures of y'all.
All right, that's different.
Yeah, so if y'all want to get into paddleboarding, they've got a witches and warlocks paddleboarding once a year at the New River Gorge, just under the bridge. Like, there's like a road that goes under the bridge and down to the river, and that's where they paddleboard.
Huh, that's wild.
It's neat. It was really neat to watch. It was very, very it was really neat because it was a beautiful morning. They were kind of hoping it was going to be foggy so they could go in and out of the fog and kind of creepy.
Oh,
like,
man.
This is very witchcraft. Like, y'all are welcome to come hang out anytime. They were very cool about it because they were kind of nervous when I showed up. I'm like, hi, I represent the pagan community, which is a very arrogant statement on my behalf, but I did it anyway. And they got very nervous about that. I'm like, don't worry, I'm not here to eat your kids. But I think they were worried about being culturally insensitive. I'm like, nah, it's cool. I just wanted to kind of take some pictures for everybody to see if we get like the pagan community interested in paddleboarding, because I think that would be great for. Here's one thing I do notice that this is another thing I kind of wanted to do with my channel, is I wanted to start exploring the state's like touristy sites, because you know, a lot of paganism is nature-based. We ground a lot. We get into the elements. So why not get into the elements in our state and start, bringing that glory back home?
Yeah.
So
and there are a lot of places in the state that are severely injured from a paganism point of view based on undermining, strip mining, fracking now. The logging industry decimated so much of the state. So it's all starting to be reclaimed and everything, but it still needs a lot of healing. And if there's anything that we can do as pagans to help that along, we really need to step up and make an attempt, if nothing else.
Honestly, and because it's not just like the earth itself is hurt, but also the people of the earth are hurt. These mining towns, they go up and then they collapse, and the people there are left with very few resources. And it's beautiful land out in the middle of nowhere. We just went to, my boyfriend and I went to Hawk's Nest this weekend, and they've taken out their tram because they weren't getting the traffic they needed to maintain it.
Oh.
Yeah, it always and that kind of devastated him. And I mean, they've still got a hotel. They've still got a lot of really cool things going on. There's still a lot of reason to go out there. Like, we went out there and just did the hiking, because just down from that is the New River Gorge, and it's got all trails all over the place out there.
Yeah.
So like, if you're into nature and you want to go out and be in nature, you can go out to these places, and they've got like national park passes.
Oh,
You
yeah.
get stamped every time you go.
Natalie says, I just want to do zip lining in a forest. Guess what? You can do that at New River Gorge.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they shoot you off the side of the bridge, but hey, it's a zip line.
Yeah, the route they went was not friendly for beginners. So there are some unfriendly there's some unfriendly trails out there.
Ace Adventures 2. Where's Ace Adventures located?
You know what? That is something Fayetteville.
Fayetteville. Okay.
Oh my God. So I went out to Fayetteville. I did not realize that apparently they have a fairly robust pride community. Like we saw flags in windows.
Really?
Yeah, we saw flags and windows, and there's a metaphysical shop out there. It's also a head shop. So, you know, a lot of times you get that mix of head shop, metaphysical shop in a lot of places.
Yeah.
But it's the great Googly Moogly, and they were really super knowledgeable, and they had some very interesting, they had a lot of stones, but they had some very interesting tarot cards and other things like that. Fayetteville's got it going on. It's got a little bit of something. We went to turn around in a church parking lot and found out it wasn't a church, there was an art hall.
Really?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but it's right there amongst the little community that's a little bit more robust. And I cannot remember what it's called, but if you look up Art Gallery in Fayetteville, I'm sure you'll find it.
Okay. That is a movement I've seen more frequently recently, and I really appreciate this. A lot of places, small churches, small community churches are being sold, and they're being renovated and reclaimed by different groups. Like you said, that was an art community. I know one guy in Elkins who is turning it into a recording studio because the acoustics are fantastic. So why not lean into the attributes of the building?
There's a 100-year-old church that's literally just down the road from me, and I really thought about buying it and doing something like that, turning it into my permanent office.
Mm-hmm. My dad, one of his childhood friends, I remember when I was growing up, we went to visit him in Cincinnati, and he did the same thing, but he was a woodworker. So the main, I can't remember what it's called, where the pews are, and the congregation sits in a church. I think it's the nave. But because that was such a large open area, he turned the first floor of the church into his wood shop. And then he and his wife lived on the second and third floors of the building. Sanctuary. Okay, there we go.
Cool. Like, we do have some messages here. Yes, we will laugh at you screaming, Natalie. I'm sorry. I am that bitch. I will laugh at you every step of the way. I will talk you into it and then laugh at you. Just so you know. So Oak Hill, I know it was near Oak Hill. Some of my friends went and sent me pictures like, you'd love this. And then I was just like, I don't want skin cancer. LOL. Yeah, I get that. Us pale bitches we don't tan well. It doesn't go well at all.
So yeah, while we're catching up on messages, does anyone in the chat have questions about cryptids or even about magic books, anything like that I may have an answer for?
Yeah, because we're going to need to wrap it up. We're almost at an hour and a half, and we usually try to cut these at an hour.
You don't get that when I'm talking.
Nope. You know what I say? I usually cut these at an hour, but if it's interesting, it goes way longer. Part of my New Year's resolution is to try and get more structure to things, but I think these are just going to keep going the way they go.
Yeah, it's hard to keep it under really an hour and a half. That seems to be the going amount of time for something like this. Like even for my podcast recordings, like when I do an interview, it lasts generally an hour and a half, and I cut it back to an hour.
I've been thinking about doing that, having the clients come on and having the conversation and then editing it together. But I really love like this aspect. Like we've got a question from Natalie. What is your favorite sighting story?
Oh boy, favorite sighting. I don't think I have a favorite like public sighting, but I have two sightings of my own that were pretty strange. I have had a Bigfoot sighting, which kept me out of the woods hunting for like 6 years. Like,
Oh, wow.
for real, I did not go hunting for 6 years after this because it was just too unsettling. And I'll go ahead and tell that story. It was I was on a hillside with a woodcut for a power line, right? Because there's that big open area, and I was sitting at the top of the hill looking down the power line, and a group of friends and my family were walking through the woods trying to push deer towards me across the power line so I could get a shot. Complete silence. No birds, no deer, nothing. And that should have been my first sign right there. And it was dusk. It was the sun was starting to go down, so the shadows were getting pretty long, and there were places on the wood line to hide, right? And I looked down about 100 yards downhill, and I see a figure standing there in the shadows of the wood line. And it looked like regular human size, and it's just standing there. And I think it's one of the people that were actually part of the deer drive, you know? But then I realized they're not wearing orange, which is a requirement for rifle season. You have to wear blaze orange so people can tell that you're a person.
And
This
not a
thing was
deer.
solid black.
Ooh.
And I looked at it through my rifle scope. It had a very clear human outline to it. But what really creeped me out is I could not see a face. I could not see details, even through the scope. It was just a human-shaped object. So I started trying to rationalize it because I know there's black bear in that area. I know black bears stand up on their hind legs, and they can stay that way for quite a while, especially if they're eating. So I
Right.
watched this thing, and as the sun starts to go down more and more, it just turns and walks back into the woods. Now, that doesn't sound strange, especially if you're thinking, oh, it's still just a bear on two legs. Except a bear's hips don't allow it to pivot. They would waddle back and forth and make tiny little steps, but they can't make a full turn. And if they do, they would drop down to four legs. So the fact that this thing could do a full 180 turn and walk in a straight line back into the woods signals to me that it was at least humanoid, if not a human or possibly Bigfoot. And I only say it's Bigfoot because I couldn't see any details, but it was solid. So it definitely wasn't like a shadow person. And it lasted for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, creeped me out really, really big. I kept it to myself too. Like I said, I stayed out of the woods hunting for like 6 years. I didn't tell anybody about it for about 10.
Oh,
Like
wow.
I kept that to myself. No one knew about it, even my family, even the people that were hunting with me. I did not tell them any of that. My other story is when I was working at Earth Magic. So there's 2 rooms to Earth Magic. There's the main sales floor, and there's a back room that is divided with curtains. And it's like 2 curtains where you pull them apart to walk through, right?
Right.
So I was in the back room. I heard the bell chime on the door telling me that someone walked in. And I just yell out, hey, I'll be out in a second. I just got to finish something up here. And I see this girl walk in. She walks past. And then I see an older gentleman walk behind her. And this is like, maybe he's in his 70s. He's mostly bald on top, but he's got those strips of hair around the sides above his ears and everything. And he had a blue button-up shirt, like a powder blue button-up shirt on. And they both walked behind a fixture, so I couldn't see anything like below their shoulders. So I finish up what I was doing, and I walk out, and I look, and the sales floor is super small. So I look out, and the girl is over in the corner looking at tarot cards. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, okay, where's this other guy? So I ask her, it's like, hey, where's the guy that came in with you? And she just looks at me very weird, and she's like, I am here alone. There's no one else here. No one's with me.
Right.
So I very clearly saw a full body apparition. It didn't even register to me at the time that it was a ghost. It looked like a person following this girl into the store.
Oh, wow.
The door had not opened. No one came in. No one left. and like the sales floor is the size of a single room.
The
One
Earth
of us would
Magic
have seen it.
Morgantown.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've actually been up there. That's the one I've got. That's the psychic shopping episode I have on my editor.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've
So
got,
those
like,
are my
yeah.
two favorite stories right there. Let's see. We have looking at the chat.
I have one. I have one like that.
Oh, sure.
So, y'all, if you ever want to spot something, I'm not going to go into the nursing home stories because we would literally be here all night.
Yeah.
But one of the last times I went into a bar, I went for a pagan event, and I look over, and this guy salutes me with his mug. I look back at the bar. I'm like, who's that guy? They're like, what guy? I look back. Nobody there.
Ooh.
Nice
yeah,
enough.
those are always
Just
creepy.
like, hey, just tipped his beer to me. That was it. Like, you get used to some of the
Yeah.
weirder shit, but that's still some weird shit.
And I want to point out too, that's the only time I've ever seen an apparition like visibly with my eyes. I've encountered spirits and things like that before. Usually it's how they infect the environment around me.
Right.
But that is the only time I have physically seen one.
I get a lot of the flashing, especially when I'm at a bar or someplace where like there's a weird energy level. Like, you know, you'll be standing there and it'll look like somebody runs past you like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think the strangest thing that I have happened to me is occasionally I will very clearly, very audibly hear my name called. Not my full name, it's just Jason. And it's happened to me several times throughout my life, and it's very just direct. It's not a question, it's like trying to get my attention, but it's disembodied. Yeah. I don't know which direction it's coming from, but I can hear it very audibly. It's super unsettling, and it never seems to have a point. Like, you hear these stories that someone calls your name, so it causes you to pause, and it keeps you from walking across the street where you would have been hit by a bus. No, this is completely nonsensical. It's just my name being called, like in the middle of a department store or something.
Okay, we are over an hour and a half. I'm gonna have to wrap this up, y'all. So tell us again where we can find your podcasts, where we can find your merch, all the fun stuff.
Well, the good news is you can find pretty much all of my stuff through esotericbookclub.org. Don't go to esotericbookclub.com. That page doesn't really exist, and it's not mine. But it's got all the podcasts. You can listen directly from the page right there. If you have another podcasting app, you can literally find me anywhere. Just look for Esoteric Book Club. Find the one that has an open book with a big green ghost and a purple tentacle. You can't miss it. The merch is also on my website. It's got a little tab at the top of the bar. It's got like episodes, Patreon, and then merch. So you can find everything there. If you want to connect with me on social media, I am on Instagram, which I don't use very often because they don't allow links. And I'm also on Facebook under Esoteric Book Club or Esoteric Book Club Fan Club, I think it is, which I started doing because like Facebook likes to hide business pages that don't pay for ads. But the fan club, it's a group. So yeah, they're going to promote that if you're in the group.
I've thought about that. I've got a couple of groups that have kind of gone dead that I'm thinking about doing that with.
It helps. It helps a lot. I got Natalie doing that too, and it seems to do pretty good for like spontaneous posts with the algorithm. You know, they just randomly will show you things, whereas like from a business page, they just don't.
You know what? I will try that then, because I think I've got a couple of dead Facebook groups that I just want to recycle.
Yeah, there you go.
So thank you very much for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure. Sorry, y'all. English hard.
Words are hard.
Yeah, neurodivergency is part of the flavor around here.
Yeah. I think that runs in the pagan community in general.
Right. That's how we roll.
Yep.
I would like to thank all our guests for showing up. We did have quite a turnout tonight, so thank you guys. As always, I am Dottie the Psychic. You can find me at DOTTIE thepsychic.com. So I think that's everybody. Safe travel and much profit to you.